Welcome to the channel. You're tuned into the Spiritual Samurai Scribe, where it is the home of the spiritual fuego, healing, and combating spiritual and psychological warfare for the purpose of becoming an empowered individual. I want to go over the few things, and it's based on the post that I wrote yesterday, where it has to do with how people falsely accuse spiritually gifted people of being witches and warlocks. We need to make the distinction very clear between a seer and a witch. And I know that people like to throw around the word witch. For some people, they look at the term witch as a term of endearment, or they look at it as like a badge of honor, which I don't agree with that. What separates the seer from the witch mainly is a couple things, and that is the source of their power. You either get it from the Most High, which is a high vibrational source, or you're getting it from Diablo, which is a low vibrational source. The source of where you get your power is what determines the difference. Another thing too is intention. And of course, the intention is tied into the source, because if your intentions are pure, you're going to get your power from the Most High. If your intentions are malicious, then you're going to get it from the enemy, because the Most High is not going to empower someone who has malicious intent. The act of you having malicious intent is just going to make it's going to really empower the darkness, So, and another thing too, another difference I want to highlight is when it comes to the discernment and the intuition that you receive from the Most High, it is for the purpose of you protecting yourself, and the Most High only reveals to you what you need to know at a specified time. He's not going to bombard you with a bunch of information that you may not be ready for. You see, the Most High only gives you what you're ready for, what your mind is prepared to see. And if your spirit is in proper alignment, and it's a reason why, it's a process in getting to that point, because having good intentions and just overall having a good spirit, having a good spirit is very important in receiving information. But the Most High knows your intent. The Most High knows our hearts, so He knows our intentions, and He also knows the divine timing, the perfect timing to show and reveal things to us in order to protect us. Throughout the Bible, there have been many stories in which dreams would come to individuals to guide them, to help them, to evade danger, to make a certain move, a response to a prayer. Those things are what a seer would have, a chosen one, a spiritually gifted, anointed individual would have those spiritual gifts. That is not evil. That is not witchcraft. What is witchcraft is when a person is getting their power from a corrupted source, which is Diablo, and they carry on malicious intent. So that's when somebody is power hungry. They want it now. These are the individuals that they are not trying to go through the process of refinement, of spiritual attunement, or anything like that. These are the individuals that tend to have highly narcissistic traits, where they want it now and they want it their way, and also they want their way all the time. They don't have respect for divine order, because they are bending reality and manipulating free will to go in their favor only.
which is a very self-absorbed and self-serving way of dealing with energy, especially when they carry malicious intent. Oftentimes it comes with the purpose of destroying someone else's life out of jealousy, malice, and hatred. So you see the difference there? You know, it's a huge difference. So this is why these differences need to be made. We need to make it clear what the difference is, because we see a lot of this, people slandering spiritually gifted people, comparing them to someone that is nothing like them, because a seer is nothing like a witch. And I understand it's confusing for some, because there are people who are glorifying the term witch. They're glorifying that. And it doesn't help that you have spiritual covert narcissists, religious communal narcissists that use religion as a cloak, but behind closed doors, they practice the dark arts. It doesn't help that you have those kind of people around, because they're also the reason why people distrust the faith overall, you know, because too many people are corrupted. And they wear religion like a fashion statement. They don't actually live by the faith, you know? And that's why some of us that we want to get closer to God, we want to know the truth. We want to live by truth. We separate ourselves from religious institutions because we understand that the corruption is too much. And it's not to say that every single church is like that. It's just that there's just too many that are like that. And it can get very confusing. And we don't want to align ourselves with a congregation or institution that practices things behind closed doors that we don't know of. You don't know what kind of energy, you know, we're giving to them every time we attend their temple, right? Because that's a temple is a place that contains energy. You know, your presence has energy, and when you go there, you don't know what you're giving your energy to, because people, you know, that the religious narcissists, a lot of times they secretly practice, you know, witchcraft behind closed doors, you know. So there's just so much confusion around all of this, and I think that we need to understand the distinction between being a seer and a witch. We need to understand the difference between being spiritually gifted and being a person that is a sorcerer or actual sorcerer, which oftentimes a sorcerer, right? See, here's the thing. When you're spiritually gifted, some people are going to think that you're a sorcerer because of how powerful you are. You carry a powerful presence. You know, because if you get your source from the Most High is only going to provide whatever you're ready to handle. You know, he's not going to give you all of this stuff and knowing that you're not going to handle it responsibly. A person seeks power from the darkness, from Diablo, when they know that if they go to God, they're not going to get it, because God knows they're not coming to him with the right intentions. And so people go toward Diablo for their egomaniac desires, you know? And I know that's why you often hear them say that God's not going to give them what they want. Well, yeah, because God is not a genie. God's not just going to give you whatever you want just because you want it. He's only going to give to those that are ready for it and that come with the proper heart posture. Because he knows that when you have a proper heart posture, you're going to use that gift responsibly. So I want to say that. I want to clarify that right there. Now, the definition of a witch is, we're going to use Google for this one. A witch is traditionally defined as a person, typically female. Now, of course, if you want to, men can also engage in this. That would be a warlock, right? But for the sake of this definition, it's someone who is believed to possess malicious supernatural powers, often depicted in folklore. And of course, we're not going to read all that, because to them, it's like they don't think this is real. But we know it is. Let's see. And of course, today we are in the age of information, but we're also in the age of where there's a lot of confusion and false prophets and stuff like that. So I understand that this can be very confusing for a lot of people, but it's important to understand that you don't want to end up, slandering someone that is actually a seer, someone who's actually spiritually gifted by the Most High. Whereas you could go to a church and you might think that you might think that those people in that church are so holy, so sanctified, but come to find out that some of them practice actual witchcraft with malicious intent, bringing destruction to people that go to their congregation or anybody that they're jealous of. That's why at this point in time, you cannot trust a person just because they claim a certain religion. You cannot just trust a person at face value just because they're a churchgoer, or even if they're a part of the church. You just don't know, right? So what we're seeing is people putting so much blind faith and trust in religious institutions, which in today's day and age, a lot of institutions have been corrupted. And I'm not saying that about all of them, but it's enough for us to be cautious and aware of that, right? So this is why discernment is important, And when you look at a definition of a seer, a seer refers primarily to a person who sees specifically a prophet or someone with spiritual foresight. I'm going to go over this right here, and that is pattern recognition is not witchcraft. Now, pattern recognition has to do with the fact that, after going through all the trauma that you've been through, you start healing, you start noticing patterns, and you learn your lessons, you become very aware to where a lot of things don't fly over your head. If you learn, if you grow and heal, you start to have pattern recognition, right? That's when you move from hypervigilance to discernment. And that's basically what that is. Discernment is pattern recognition, because now you can see the truth from the lie. You can see who has malicious intent and who doesn't. So therefore, pattern recognition is not witchcraft. But sometimes we could be so sharp with it that some people might think that's what it is, right? Just like when you have dreams that warn you about certain people. A lot of times dreams are influenced by so many different factors. I mean, I could write a whole book about that. But for the sake of this video, sometimes when you have trauma, especially complex trauma, you oftentimes have very vivid dreams that can show you so many different things. And of course, you have to have very strong discernment when it comes to that, because some dreams can serve as a warning about certain things, to what to look for, which is really your mind processing all the things you've been through and putting it together into a dream that captures these patterns, and you recognize it. But again, you have to have discernment to understand this, because you cannot interpret dreams literally. At least not to you. For the most part, it's not literal. It's all symbolic when it comes to dreams. But you have to really, man, it takes a lot of it's a different level of wisdom to really be able to properly interpret dreams. We're not gonna get into too much of that, but the next part is having advanced intuition is not witchcraft. And intuition is just, you just have this, like, you have these senses, where you just know. Sometimes your intuition can be so sharp that some people might think that, oh, you must be doing this. You don't really have to do all that. And especially as women, we get accused of that oftentimes, even though the feminine intuition, the intuition of a woman is supposed to be advanced. You know why? Because since they say, this is interesting, because they say that we're emotional creatures, even though we see men acting emotional nowadays, but I digress. Advanced intuition, the concept, the reason why women are known for having heightened intuition is because we are very in tune with the emotional well-being of the people around us. That comes from caring for our children and everyone else, of course, not just our children, but there's a sacred relationship between the mother and her child. So of course her intuition has to be heightened so that she can protect her baby. We can have ideas and suggestions, and also there's certain gifts that we have regarding that can actually help the household and things like that, so that way the husband is not just doing everything alone. The wife and the husband, I mean, they work together. They have certain strengths, right? The husband has his role, his strengths, and the wife, same thing. So, but even though the role may be different and our strengths and weaknesses are going to be somewhat different, we are compatible in those differences. And so, of course, having advanced intuition, normally, that is something that women are known for having because it's connected to our maternal instinct. We have to know of the dangers that are around us to protect ourselves and also protecting our babies and our household. So there is a level of this instinct to protect, our babies primarily, right? Because of course the husband is known as the protector of the entire unit, of the entire family unit, whereas the mother, her number one priority is her babies. It's a reason why Mama Bear has a lot of wrath when you come close to her cubs. She has to have heightened intuition to sense danger coming near her babies. And when you are in tune with nature itself and when you're in tune with your maternal instinct and just really overall just being in tune spiritually, you're gonna have advanced intuition. And it's not to say that men can't have intuition. Of course they can. It's just that with women it's more emphasized. But the reason why you don't really see that now is because we live in a society where people are living in the flesh. And when you live in the flesh, you're not gonna have heightened awareness or intuition because you're not even trying to listen to the voice of God. You're not even trying to take heed to wisdom. And if you're not open to wisdom, you're not going to have advanced intuition regardless of whether you're a woman or not. But I believe that God placed that in us specifically for the main purpose of being able to not only be there for our babies, but being able to provide emotional and spiritual support to everyone in the household. It's a very beautiful gift. It really is. This is connected to speaking life to those around you, to your loved ones and everything like that. There's so many beautiful things that women were created to do, we were created to just do so many great things, but nobody seems to be aware of that because we live in a toxic society where you already know. I don't have to say anything else after that. But next point is having wisdom beyond your years is not witchcraft. Oh yeah, I can definitely yes, I definitely understand this one because given that I'm actually quite young. Now, when you listen to me, you might think I'm older, but I'm not. Throughout my life, I have freaked people out because of how much I knew. I've actually had one individual, it was a man. He told me, this was a long time ago, I was like 18, and this person was like, I think he was like 29 or 30 something. He was like early 30s or something, but I recall that this person said that they were intimidated by my knowledge. Oftentimes, especially if you're a woman and you have wisdom beyond your years, it makes men uncomfortable because they're not used to that, and they'll accuse you of witchcraft, even though you don't need to do that to have wisdom or to be an old soul. You could just be an old soul, and you just understand your surroundings so well. It's crazy how they always say that us as women, we need to pick better, right? they always say that you women need to pick better. Okay, well, how do you expect me to pick better if I don't have wisdom? And that wisdom is gonna have to be beyond my years, because what is the most dangerous time of our life? When we're teenagers, right? Adolescence, a lot of craziness happens, right? So if I have wisdom beyond my years, if I have wisdom, it's gonna have to be beyond my years, because normally the beginning of our bad decision making, it comes from when we're young, because we don't know any better. But if we do know better, then we will do better. So you just can't win, essentially. Like, if you don't have wisdom, oh, you should pick better. And then if you do, oh, you're a witch. There's no way. Where did you get that knowledge from? Oh my goodness. All right, next point is having foresight is not witchcraft. And that pretty much ties into advanced intuition and pattern recognition, basically. Foresight is the ability to see future events. Now, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily predicting stuff, even though it might come off like that. It's kind of like the weather. You ever look at the weather, you're like, how do they know that it's going to rain tomorrow, that it's going to be cloudy for the rest of the week, or it's going to be sunny today, whatever. Well, not today. I mean, it's obvious, but you get the point. So that's why they call it forecast, right? It has the same prefix, FORE. That means in the future, right? Foresight, forecast. Forecast is knowing the weather, ahead of time, so that you prepare for it. You could apply the same analogy to foresight. It's important to have that, because that way you can prepare yourself. You could prepare yourself mentally and spiritually for whatever may come your way. There's nothing evil about that. I mean, that's just moving with wisdom and knowing what you need to do, which is tied to divine timing, which is tied to, moving accordingly, right? And when you have foresight, another thing too I want to say is that it's kind of like when you understand like data analysis, the purpose of data analysis is to gather information. You gather data to form conclusions that could give us some level of foresight of what to expect in the future, so that we can make better decisions that will allow the company or the business to prosper. Now, apply that to your life. We gather all the data from the past, right? All of the things we've been through, but also with a healed perspective. And that's key, because oftentimes when people are not healed, their data-driven decisions is based on a bitter worldview, right? You don't want to make decisions based on bitterness and being jaded, because that gives us inaccurate results. That gives us a lot of bias, because you're already expecting a negative result, right? That's why when you gather data from the past, you have to make sure that you are healed enough to extract the wisdom from that data from the past and use it to create use it for your foresight, to see the possibility of, if I go this route, what would happen, right? If I go in this other direction, how will my life turn out? That's all it is. It is tied to your discernment. Okay, this is the right path. What's going to happen, right? Well, this is a dark path. What's going to happen? A downward spiral, which you probably shouldn't go that way. And that's all it is with foresight, right? That's all it is. If you've already been through narcissistic abuse, right, and now you're healed, okay, you meet someone and they start exhibiting the same toxic behavior, and you start to see, oh yeah, this person's a narcissist. This person is abusive overall, whether or not they're a narcissist, but you know that they're toxic. So once you know that this person is toxic, then your foresight will say that, oh yeah, obviously getting married to that person is a terrible idea and you probably shouldn't. And I think you should just go home and, probably block the number, because it's not going to get anywhere. And that's all it is. Foresight comes with wisdom. You going by him making you feel good is going to lead you to a world of hurt, I'm telling you. We've seen it. We've seen it with the... Yeah, we've seen it. Okay, if you're a 90s baby, you've seen what I've seen in most cases, you know. Even though this is probably nothing new. Nothing new is under the sun, right? But next point I want to get into is being a wise woman doesn't make her a witch. Oh yeah, and that's how you know that when people call you that, if you're a woman with wisdom, they'll try to shame us from sharing our thoughts or just existing overall. And that's the reason why some of us have lived in silence. You know, I've been in silence for a while because, I don't know, for various reasons. Like, I mean, but, you know, this is how you know that the attack is gender specific, you know, and that's what you call misogyny in that case. And I don't like using that term too much because I think that too many people throw it around too much. It kind of diluted the meaning of it because misogyny is a real thing and it is a problem, right? And so, you know, now it goes back to what I said earlier about how you just can't win, right? If you're a woman who's foolish, you know, they get to clown you, they get to degrade you, disrespect you, because you are exactly what they expect. You know, they want us to be foolish so that they can, you know, just treat us like nothing, right? Because in a society that is highly narcissistic, you're going to have people that they want someone to trample on. They want someone to bully, to push around, to degrade. But if you're a woman with wisdom, you're gonna move differently. You're gonna have a different kind of energy and presence to you that may be uncomfortable or intimidating to most people, especially men. Men seem to be uncomfortable with that because it kind of like, it makes them feel like they're not as dominant because the only way they can relate to a woman is through dominance, even though we can relate through compatibility. When you're compatible with each other, there's going to be mutual respect. And a wise woman is only going to respect a man that is respectable, right? And vice versa. It's all about balance. And what I'm seeing is that we live in a society where people don't want to have a balanced relationship. You know, people would prefer a power dynamic because of insecurity. And you have a lot of people with a lot of insecurities and very unhealed in nowadays and stuff. So yeah, but being a wise woman doesn't make her a witch, because see, the reason why they think that is because they don't expect a woman to be wise, which that in of itself just shows that you are a misogynist. I mean, I don't know what better way to describe it. Or maybe they were never exposed to a woman like that, you know? Maybe they don't know any better, you know? But it becomes a problem when they start becoming violent, right? And we've seen that before, where some of these men get violent with a woman with that knows too much, right? If she knows too much, they fear that. And the reason why they fear that is because they can't control a wise mind. And overall, you know, whether you're a man or a woman, if you have a wise mind, this society is going to, they're not going to be very fond of you. They're not going to really appreciate you because you can see through all the illusions. And a person who is addicted to control, a person who is obsessed with, you know, a person that operates from a power dynamic, and a person that is obsessed with having power over others, they're not going to like people with wise minds, you know. But especially in this context, being a wise woman, you know, there's going to be men that have a problem with that, you know. The men that feel that way about us, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, but in my observation, it seems like it's a pattern that I noticed. And it's like men that feel uncomfortable with a woman having wisdom, you know, calling her a witch and all this stuff. Not only is it men that are obsessed with power and having all this power over other people and stuff and misusing their authority as a man, but it's the fact that, you know, they have a lot of unhealed wounds that they have not unpacked, and they fear that woman is going to see that and she's going to look down on him for that reason. So they fear exposure, they fear vulnerability. They don't want to be seen as weak in front of her. And I think that's another reason. And another reason, there's so many different reasons. I'm just naming a few. Another reason, another thing I noticed is these are, in some cases, some of these men probably they had maternal deprivation. So they didn't really have a mother figure, they didn't have a healthy mother figure when they were growing up. You know, she might have been toxic or abusive, or maybe she abandoned them or what have you. I mean, there's so many different scenarios, but all in all, they did not have a healthy mother presence in their life to really show them what a woman really is and what women are here to be and to do, right? And the power that we have, just being connected to God, right? Of course, when you're connected to God, then there's going to be a lot of beautiful things that a woman can do for you. There's so many gifts that we can have. It's just that we're not allowed to shine when it comes to that, because it makes men uncomfortable. And also it makes other women jealous. Yeah, we're going to add that too, because there is going to be, you have jealous women as well, you know. And what do the jealous women usually become? They end up, some of them become a witch, you know. Now that is your actual witch right there. The woman that is the vindictive, spiteful woman that is jealous of the wise woman. There you go. You know, so it's important to have discernment. Do not put us on the same box, because we are not the same. Absolutely not. The next point is, being spiritually gifted doesn't make you a sorcerer. And I think that pretty much concludes most of what we discussed, right? Now, my interpretation of what a sorcerer is, it's mainly, of course, we already talked about the source. You know, two things to consider: what is the source of your power, and what are your intentions, right? And that those are the two key questions to ask yourself if you ever want to assess a person, to see the difference between a seer and a witch, right? So a sorcerer, you know, it's kind of like, you could be so powerful as a spiritually gifted person that people will label you a sorcerer. They will think you are one. They will fear you, right? And you'll notice that when you know that you're not a sorcerer, because you are operating from a high vibrational source, which is the Most High, and you have good intentions, right? So therefore, you're not a sorcerer, because sorcerers, most of what they do is meant to be self-serving, right? Now, some of them, you could say some sorcerers might be evil, and some of them might not be. Some of them might have been deceived. You know, some of them, maybe they just wanted a source of protection because they didn't know how to combat spiritual and psychological warfare. So they fall into that to protect themselves. So sometimes they're not even, when people become sorcerers, it's not always because they necessarily have a malicious intent. You know, it could be various reasons. Now, I'm not saying that to, you know, give you some rose-colored glasses either, but there's just so many nuances and so many things to consider when it comes to this, because, you know, we've been deceived before. You know, we've been deceived, whatever that was. Maybe it wasn't a sorcerer for you. Maybe for you, you were very unhealed. You were making, you know, some of us have made, you know, there's people that have made bad decisions in life. You know, there's people that they used to be this, they used to be that. And then, you know, you live and you learn and you understand. And when you understand, you do better, right? So that's why, you know, I don't necessarily think that if a person is even if they're a witch or a sorcerer or even a warlock, that they're going to permanently be evil. There's so many stories behind why people become what they become. But essentially, what's important is you protecting your own energy, you protecting yourself, maintaining your divine covering, focusing on your own relationship with God, and hoping that those that have been deceived by whatever it is that they were deceived by, that they are able to see the light and open their eyes to the truth about whatever it is that they need to know. right? And I say that because there are people that used to be witches that have testimonies. There are people that used to be sorcerers. You know, there are ex-witches and ex-warlocks that have very valuable information that can save so many people, that can actually prevent people from seeking power from the darkness, because they already went through that and they learned from it, and now they have a powerful testimony to share to the world that can actually save souls. So to those people, I have a lot of respect for them. Absolutely. And, you know, so there's that. And then yeah, they might as well say that having a high IQ is evil too, because IQ, all IQ really is just pattern recognition. And we already went through all of this. Pattern recognition, which is tied to your advanced intuition, which is going to allow you to have wisdom beyond your years. You know, pattern recognition also helps you with foresight and all these things. So that's connected to even having a high IQ, which is just an elevated intelligence, which I would think that the Most High would want us to be intelligent so that we are vigilant, you know, and we are aware of what's going on around us. So when you're spiritually gifted, all it is this: being high vibrational and having a direct connection to the Creator grants you with spiritual gifts that come to you when you're in proper alignment and have a pure heart. Your spiritual sight improves the more your discernment sharpens, and that comes through your healing, right? And that clarity comes from healing and evolving. Those people who accuse and slander spiritually gifted people are afraid of what we may know, and that is key, because if you know where your heart is, if you are very close to the Most High, you know yourself, then you're not concerned about the slander. However, it is very detrimental to the ones that actually are sharing the truth and really sharing valuable testimonies that save souls. But also keep note that the more you remain consistent in this walk, you know, you keep doing what you do despite the smear campaign and all that, eventually you keep walking with God. It's going to show. You know, people who have the right discernment, people that have the Holy Spirit, people that you know they're walking in proper alignment, they're going to know that you are also in that same proper alignment. They're going to know, right? People that are spiritually gifted, they're going to know who you are. Trust me, because we know who we are. We know each other. The more we learn, the better our discernment becomes, and then we know who is who. And that is very key to ensuring that we actually fellowship with the right people, you know? So it gets to a point where those who accuse and slander spiritually gifted people, right, it becomes obvious that they are simply intimidated and afraid of what you may know. And you might ask yourself, well, why are you so afraid of what I may know? Do you have something to hide? You know? And oftentimes, the Most High will only reveal to us what we should know to protect ourselves. So we're not out here trying to be in people's business and be nosy and be, oh, I want to know this person's destiny and all this goofy shit. That's what the witches do. You know, that's what they do. Want to know what your destiny is so that they can derail it and all that. See, we're not doing that shit. I'm not doing that shit. And you're going to know. You're going to know with your discernment. If you have proper discernment, you can tell who is who and what. You're going to see that if you're a chosen one, you don't need to derail anyone's destiny. No, you have your own destiny. If anything, they're trying to derail ours. Why do you think they're slandering? Why do you think they falsely accuse us of stuff, you know, and saying these things and claiming that we're this and that? And they know so much about us, but they're not around us. And they don't even have... again, these people have no discernment. They have little to no knowledge. The act of them even making accusations like that just shows that they have little to no knowledge. And it's even more funnier. Check this out. It's even more funnier when they accuse you of having demonic insight while they take your insight. They take your insight. They steal from you. They steal your ideas. You notice that about these people is that they'll take from you. They'll take your insight and then turn around and say that you are providing demonic insight. This is a sign that this person is a witch, and this person, it's like, focus on first of all, focus on your own life, focus on your own relationship with God, and once you heal, you're gonna have clear vision. And when you have clear vision, you're gonna know that I'm not the person you want to attack. And I don't say that in a threatening way. I say that with wisdom, because I'm actually not here to harm anyone. And a lot of us that are in proper alignment, we understand. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm saying. So I say all that to say that the more longevity you have in being directly connected to God, and the more you grow and evolve spiritually, it's going to get to a point where it becomes obvious that those who slandered you, they feared what you know. That's all it is, right? And you know that you are on the right track when the same people who slander you and claim that you're a witch, or that you're providing demonic insight, these are the same people that will literally steal your insight. That's the crazy part, right? So at the end of the day, the truth doesn't scare those who live by it. So there's no need to be concerned with these people. All you have to do is increase in wisdom and be able to articulate your thoughts and everything like that, and the truth. And honestly, you just can't. It gets to a point it becomes irrefutable. Right? You cannot refute against truth, unless you are a deceiver. You want to bend reality to make it seem like someone good is actually bad, and that's what the smear campaign is. And that is why slandering and gossiping is akin to witchcraft, because it's a form of manipulation, because you're manipulating the way a person sees someone that is innocent. Imagine slandering someone that's innocent, slandering a healer, a seer that was placed on this earth to elevate the frequency of the planet, and also while breaking generational curses. So it's a lot of heaviness that we have to carry, so this is nothing new. We've been carrying heavy weight for a very long time, since we were born. So, but it's important that we empower each other, we enlighten each other, we keep learning and growing, so that these kind of things don't affect us like it used to, because now we have better understanding, more knowledge, right? And when you have a pure heart, then you know that your source is going to come from the Most High. And that is what is important. So key things to think about, right, before you want to accuse someone of something, is where is the source of their power, as well as what is their intention, so, shout out to every content creator that I support that has also gone through a similar situation like this, of people accusing you of things and they don't even understand said things. So much love to every single person that genuinely supports the channel in the form of likes, comments, shares, and subscribes. Take really good care of yourself, and you will hear from me on the next one. Gloria a Yahweh que nos trae el agua.